So for quiz 3, we're going to talk about different kinds of sentences in English. There are 3 kinds of sentences in English: simple, compound, and complex. A simple sentence has a subject, verb, and object. A simple sentence has a subject, verb, and is a complete idea. A compound sentence is linked together by a coordinating conjunction, and just 2 sentences linked together by a coordinating conjunction. A compound sentence can have more than one independent clause. A compound sentence cannot have a dependent clause without turning it into a complex sentence. Complex sentences have a dependent clause and an independent clause. When the dependent clause or subordinate clause is at the beginning of the sentence, you need a comma. So the first kind of sentence, simple sentence. Example, Martin Luther King, subject, was, verb, an American minister and activist, object. So subject, verb, object, that is a simple sentence. Compound sentence, John eats steak, but Anne eats salad. So here you have one sentence joined in another and a conjunction joined together by a coordinating so you have 2 sentences joined by fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. You always have to add a comma before fanboys. You can use a semicolon. John eats steak, semicolon, Anne eats salad, and the semicolon means and. Use a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. John eats steak, semicolon, however, Anne eats salad. More examples of compound sentences. John goes to the store, comma, and he buys food. So when you have a compound sentence, you combine 2 sentences with for, and, nor, but, or, so, yet. John goes to the store, semicolon, he buys food. So combine 2 sentences with a semicolon. John goes to the store, semicolon, and then you have a conjunctive adverb and a comma, he buys food. So you can so a compound sentence is any time you have 2 sentences joined by a coordinating conjunction or by a semicolon or a conjunctive adverb. Examples of compound sentence. Martin Luther King Day was established as a national holiday in numerous cities beginning in 1971, semicolon. However, comma, it was not made into a U.S. federal holiday until 1986. So here you have an independent clause, a coordinating conjunction, fanboys, and another independent clause. This is the formula for a compound sentence because the word compound simply means 2 sentences. So 2 sentences joined by fanboys is a compound sentence. The third kind of sentence is a complex sentence. A complex sentence has 1 independent clause and 1 dependent clause. If you begin a sentence with a dependent clause, you need a comma. A dependent clause is an incomplete thought that cannot stand alone and is a sentence fragment. It needs another sentence independent clause to complete the thought. So complex sentence, if the dependent clause, when John walks the dog, that is a dependent clause, cannot stand alone, begins the sentence, you need a comma. So when John walks the dog, comma, he chews gum. If the dependent clause, when he walks the dog, is at the end of the sentence, then you don't use any commas. So John chews gum when he walks the dog. You should always use different kinds of sentences in your writing to keep your essay interesting, in order to keep your reader engaged. Using sentence variety makes it easier to read and helps your ideas stay clear. Examples of a complex sentence. Susan B. Anthony was an American activist who played an important role to give women the right to vote. So Susan B. Anthony was an American activist. That's the independent clause. Who played an important role to give women the right to vote. That's the dependent clause. So when you put a dependent clause and an independent clause together in one sentence, then you have a complex sentence. So Susan B. Anthony, independent clause, and then a dependent clause, who played an important role to give women the right to vote. So that is a complex sentence. So Susan B. Anthony was an American rights activist, played an important role in the movement to give women the right to vote in the United States. So that's a complex sentence. The last kind of sentence is a compound complex sentence. Compound complex sentence means that we simply put a compound sentence and a complex sentence together to form one sentence. So because the media treated her like a celebrity, she was very popular. So because the media treated her like a celebrity, that is a dependent clause. She was very popular, independent clause. Then you have your compound sentence. She was very popular. In fact, she averaged a lot of speeches, 75 to 100 speeches a year. So when you put both these sentences together, you have a compound complex sentence. So the compound sentence is, she was very popular, she averaged a lot of speeches. And the dependent clause is, because the media treated her like a celebrity. So when you put a compound sentence and a complex sentence together, you have a compound complex sentence. Okay, so because the media treated her like a celebrity, so that's the dependent clause. She was very popular. So these two sentences, that's a complex sentence. Then she was very popular, she averaged a lot of speeches. That's a compound sentence. So you put the two together and it becomes a compound complex sentence. So, English sentence structure review. Simple sentence. You have a subject, verb, object. So that's a simple sentence. Then you have a compound sentence. Subject, verb, object, conjunction, subject, verb, object. So you have an independent clause, a conjunction, and an independent clause. That is a compound sentence, meaning two sentences. Then you have a complex sentence where you have a dependent clause, while John has a dog, combined with an independent clause, Mary has a cat. And you put the two together, subordinating conjunction plus independent clause. That's a complex sentence. And then when you put a compound sentence and a complex sentence together as one sentence, then you have a compound complex sentence. John, who is a dog lover, so this is a dependent clause. So John has a dog, that's an independent clause plus a coordinating conjunction, but, and then Mary has a cat is a compound sentence. So when you put a compound sentence and a complex sentence together in one sentence, that's known as a compound complex sentence. To sum up, you have 4 different kinds of sentences in English: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Now, if you think I went too fast in this video and you need a separate one-on-one lesson in which I go much slower, you can always email me, and then I can talk to you on the phone and give you a much shorter version, not shorter, slower version of this lesson. So if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me.